Hello, fellow geeks, and welcome back to Running Geek Girl. My name is Heather, and I am so glad you are here today because I'm here to tell you all about my experience running the St. Jude Memphis Half Marathon this weekend. But first of all, if you are not subscribed to the channel, make sure that you hit that subscribe button below so you don't miss any of the running content I have coming out on my channel all the time. Now, the St. Jude Memphis Half Marathon has been on my radar for so long. It's been one that I've really been wanting to run for a while, but the timing has never worked out. I've always had things going on. So it's always just kind of been on the back burner, but things worked out so that I could fit it into my schedule this year. And I'm so happy that I did. This was for such an amazing cause. If you missed my video about the St. Jude Half Marathon prep, I'll have a link up here so I can tell you a little more about some of the reasons why I really wanted to run it. But this was just a cause that really means a lot to me. And so I was all ready to do this. You'll remember that I was coming off of the Route 66 half marathon that I ran in Tulsa just on November 20th. So I had a couple of weeks to recover. During that first week, I was doing some walking recovery, built up to 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes of running until I ran 5 miles for my long run for the weekend, and then started tapering back down to just 30-minute runs and finally just some walks before the race. I also used this time to experiment with doping with a little bit of beet juice every day during the last week before the half marathon, and that worked out really well for me, so I'm definitely going to be doing that again. I'm not a huge fan of the taste of beet juice, but it does work well for me. So starting with Friday, I drove up to Memphis and I picked up my bib at the Health and Fitness Expo. There's a huge convention center right when you first cross the bridge from Arkansas into Tennessee, and that's where the Health Expo was. Ginormous building. Now, walking into the convention center, of course, they have various displays because it is Memphis. They pride themselves on their musical history and their civil rights history, so there's lots of things that you can look at there. And they also had the St. Jude Heroes Lounge. If you raised above a certain amount through fundraising, then you were eligible for a whole lot of perks and privileges, including the Heroes Lounge, various things that you could wear during the race, some VIP areas that other runners can't get to. So if and when I do this race again, I am definitely going to gun for that because it looks like they got a lot of really great perks. I didn't quite raise enough that qualified me for that this time, but I will do a harder fundraising push the next time just because I believe in the cause that much, and those perks look pretty sweet. Now, the line into the expo was long. I mean, we're talking like a ride for Disney World long, but the line moves really, really quickly. They have tons of volunteers, and let me tell you, every single one of those volunteers was friendly and helpful. They knew what they were doing. If they couldn't figure something out, that they pulled someone over and got things settled as quickly as they can. All the volunteers were really on top of their game. Now, when you register for the race, then the week of the race, several times, just to make sure that you don't miss it, they will email you a QR code that gets you into the expo. Once you get to the front of the expo, they scan your QR code and then tell you which counter you need to go to pick up your bib. There are 15 different counters plus a separate one just for the elite runners. And just to make sure that you don't forget between the time that they scan it and the time you get to the door, they also text and email you which counter you're supposed to go to, so they leave nothing to chance. Then once you get to the counter, all you do is show your ID and they start giving you your race stuff, such as your bib. This was mine right here for the half marathon. Different colors for different races. It was green for the 5K, purple for the 10K, blue for the half marathon, and gray for the marathon. Then they also give you the official event guide, which makes for a great souvenir as well as provides tons of information for every single runner. You can get this in digital form, but they also hand you a physical copy as well. And then of course they give you your bag for gear check. It has the marathon weekend logo on the front and is clear on the back so that they're able to see what's inside it just as a security measure. These are the only bags that they will allow at the gear check, so you have to make sure that you hang on to this once you get it at the expo. But it's a nice little drawstring backpack, so really easy to use, easy to keep up with and carry around. Also, when you check in, they will look at your ID to make sure that you match up with your registration, and also to check your age. If you are over the age of 21 and you plan on having alcohol at the Finishers Festival, then they will give you a wristband then. You do have to wear your wristband overnight and make sure that you don't lose it. throughout the course of the race the next day, because from the time that they give it to you until the end of the race, you're expected to keep track of that wristband if you plan on having your 2 free beers at the after party. After you pick up your bib, then they send you around to the next area where they will scan the QR code on your bib in order to make sure that you get the right size shirt that you ordered. And they have a different spot for each side. They have men on one side, women on the other side. And this is what the shirt looks like. So there you go, St. Jude Memphis Marathon Weekend. It has all the race distances, has all of the sponsors on the back, the main one being Juice Plus. You will see their logo all over everything for the weekend. And then the words St. Jude going down the sleeve, as well as arrows for each distance of the races. After that, you could round the corner into the official event merchandise area. And this had as much merchandise as a Disney race, to be honest. I mean, they had shirts for every distance. They had finisher shirts for every distance. Hoodies, sweatshirts, vests, gloves, hats, visors, caps, gloves, toys, Christmas ornaments, water bottles, socks, pretty much you name it, you can find something with your distance or just the St. Jude logo on it. So there was a ton to choose from, and it looked like the lines were going fairly quickly as well. They had a checkout area, and then they also had, just like at Disney, a self-checkout area if you needed to move a little more quickly. Then after that, you would head into the main expo area, and that was for all the other companies and races and things like that that had representation there at the expo. They also had a ton of flags up at the start, and that is because at this race, all 50 states plus 75 foreign countries were all represented at the start line, and they had a flag up to represent every single one of those. Also at the expo, they had the official pace cars, as well as some extra cars that were going to be on the sidelines in order to help other runners, and they had markers so that everybody could sign their name on the vans, and so I did that as well. And right there in the middle of the expo, they had a statue of St. Jude in case you wanted to offer a prayer before your race. Another thing that St. Jude does is they use a lot of the artwork that is created by their patients in a lot of their marketing and advertising, and so they had a ton of different pictures and lots of artwork that was created by the kids on display everywhere for everyone to see, as well as statements from the kids and their families just about how much St. Jude means to them and how much they were getting out of the treatment there. And I made sure to get a picture of this as well. They do have separate lounges, VIP areas and things like that for the St. Jude families. These are people who either have been through treatment at St. Jude or currently have family members that are in treatment at St. Jude. They have a separate area for them to meet, congregate. The hospital makes sure that they are very well taken care of, that they are fueled and hydrated especially. They have different fundraising dinners and things like that over the course of the weekend for these families. So another great service that's being provided by St. Jude Hospital to these families. And if you are a survivor of cancer, if you have been through treatment at St. Jude, or if you are a family member that currently has someone in St. Jude, they had yellow armbands with the St. Jude logo on it so that they could wear those during the race, so you could see all of these families that were being affected as they were out on the course, and you could say a word to them. They also had different signs that you could pick up at the expo to pin onto the back of whatever you were wearing, telling that you were running for someone who was currently in treatment or in memory of someone who had passed away. And this was something else that was really cool. They had a bunch of volunteers there that were handing out cheer kits so that you could either incorporate it into what you were wearing, or you could give it to people that you know were going to be spectating so they could cheer for you on the sidelines. So they had, for instance, this little pom-pom with the St. Jude logo on it, and they have these right here, little clear maracas with the St. Jude logo on it. And they also had these nice little St. Jude cowbells in the kit as well, and some St. Jude temporary tattoos if you wanted to wear those while you were running. So whether you were a runner, a family member, a spectator, they definitely had you covered. Moving ahead into race day. Now, the temperature was a little bit lower than we had expected. It was supposed to be about 65, and I believe it only got up to about 53, and it was incredibly breezy. And it was overcast, kind of drizzly. We had had rain all week, and there was a break in in the rain just for Saturday. So that worked out really, really well. But we did still have to contend with all the breeze that was going on. So I did add some sleeves to my outfit because I knew that I could pop those off if I got a little warm, which I ended up doing in the corral. Just kept my arms warm while I was waiting and then popped them off before I started running. And I switched from shorts into leggings just to give my legs a little more coverage in that wind. Everything else, however, remained the same. Now, there is great parking all around downtown Memphis. However, since the 5K starts an hour before all the rest of the races and follows a different course, they have to shut off traffic fairly early in the morning. And so if you want a place that is close to the starting line, you've got to be parked by 6:15 a.m., which I was not going to do. I was driving in and I was not going to make it that early. And so they do have another area that's maybe about a mile away from the start line that you can come and go all day, because if you park close to the starting line, like I said, you had to be parked by 6:15 and you can only leave after, I believe, 11:30. So rather than having to come up that early and then be stuck there until after the half marathon, then I decided to just kind of go to the free area, which, like I said, an extra mile is not really going to kill me in the grand scheme of things. Now, the race itself starts on B.B. King and Beale Street, which, if you know anything about Memphis, that is pretty much the heart of downtown Memphis. That's the huge historical area with all of the restaurants and bars and clubs and things like that. So a lot of history right there, and almost all of the restaurants and bars had staff early there that morning and opened up their doors so that, in addition to the row of porta potties that were outside, we could also use their bathrooms as well. They also had water and coffee and snacks available for the runners, which is great because it meant that a lot of us were going to come back later that afternoon and have lunch with them since they treated us so well in the morning. So very smart move on their part. So once I got there, I used one of the bathrooms in the restaurants and headed out. The corrals opened not too long afterwards. I was there to see a whole lot of the opening ceremonies, which was a whole lot of talk about what we had accomplished as runners just by being there that day. There were 20,000 people participating that morning. That's a pretty big race. And just between all of the fundraising and the race entries and things like that, we were able to raise $12.5 million, which is enough to fully fund 1,200 families through St. Jude. That is 1,200 children and their families that will be taken care of while they are going through treatment. The family does not have to worry about spending anything in order to make this happen. They are completely taken care of, and that's such a huge cause. The mood in the corral was very good. Everybody was happy to see each other. We started a game of high five a random stranger, so we did that in our corral. And as usual, once we got up to the front, they declared that the corral I was in was the party corral because we were ready to go. As you can see in my pictures, I was dressed up as an elf, which turned out to be a great thing because through the entire course there were kids yelling, "Look, it's an elf, go elf!" So that was super cute. I loved that. Also, the way that the course is set up, almost every single part of the course is accessible to spectators, with the exception of a couple of spots where we go over overpasses. But the whole rest of it is either through the streets of downtown or in residential areas, and it's all accessible. And so there were people cheering throughout the entire course. So the crowd support is fantastic. In the residential areas, as usual, you had people out there handing out alcohol and crackers with peanut butter and candy, water bottles, beer, just everything. Lots of people just out there cheering, holding up signs. The ones that really got to me were lots of kids around teenagers holding up signs saying, you know, because of you, I am 5 years cancer free, or thank you, St. Jude runners, you are my heroes. You know, it really, really got to me. And especially the part that got to me was, besides the start line and the finish line, which you expect to be pretty rowdy, the absolute loudest part of the course was when we ran through the St. Jude campus. We came up on the campus, and once we got to the main buildings of the campus, they had nurses out there and security, and there were families. Some of the families had brought their patients out. They had the kids out there in wheelchairs, bundled up with masks on, but they were out there cheering for us. I looked up in the windows, and there were kids looking down out of the windows, all just because they wanted to watch us run, because it was just their way of saying thank you. And I'm not gonna lie, I was bawling by the time I ran off of the campus. I was just wiping my face and trying to keep going, but I had the hugest smile on my face because you could see these kids that you were impacting, and it just really meant a lot to me. When you look at the course overall, again, this kind of reminded me of a Run Disney race in that the course was really flat. I believe the elevation gain was maybe 250 feet. There were a lot of times where people would be like, oh, be careful, there's a hill coming up. And so I'd be like, okay, gearing myself for it. And then all of a sudden somebody would be like, you made it to the top of the hill. And I was like, really? That was the hill? Probably the worst hill that we got to was just like this ramp going up to the finish line. You just kind of go pretty steep uphill, but then it flattens back out again, and it's flat the whole rest of the way to the finish line. So just a couple of, quick little ups and downs, but nothing major. It really was, for the most part, a flat course. So there were a lot of people that were hitting PRs that day, which was great.
Halfway done. Actually, more than halfway done. Refueled, hydrated. I'm ready to go. Let's see you at the finish line.
So I managed to get all the way to the finish line. As far as my run went, because I wasn't having to contend with hills, I was having to contend with a lot of running into the wind, but not so much with hills. My legs were cooperating with me, and I was able to run the last 5K straight through without a run-walk strategy. I just kind of walked through the aid stations just because I was super thirsty. We were all pretty sweaty by the end of it because it was very humid outside. But because I had had a slow start, I never was really able to catch up to that. And so I ended up finishing in around the same time as my last half marathon that I did. I believe this was around 2 hours, 33 minutes. So again, not my fastest. I believe on Strava it says it's my fastest, but that's because my actual PR was before I started using Strava. So 2:18 is still my personal best on the half marathon. I haven't beaten that yet, but I got all of 2023 to work on that. After you cross the finish line, then of course you get your lovely finisher's medal. This is the one for this year. As you can see, it has the river on it. This is all downtown Memphis. It's got the pyramid and everything. So it's got all the different colors for the different races. It's got 13.1 2022 finisher, and it has the St. Jude logo on the back. It also has a spot down here if you want to engrave your time on it. After that was the Finishers Festival at AutoZone Park, which is where the Memphis Redbirds play. So great big baseball field, and it was kind of a runners only area. Once you got in, they had lots of different food and drinks to choose from. They had more water. Of course, before we got into the festival, they had water when we first came through. They had the thermal blankets. They had the volunteers were handing us bags of snacks. So it had like cookies and crackers and stuff like that, and oranges. And but then once you got inside to the park, then you also had orange juice and chocolate milk, more water. McAllister's had hot soup there, which is great because we were all starting to cool off pretty quickly. Domino's was there, and it was kind of an all-you-can-eat pizza buffet. They had 4 or 5 different types of pizzas there. They had the major beer labels there, as well as some local breweries that were offering beer if you wanted that. So there was plenty to choose from. They had lots of space out in the bleachers for people to just sit down and rest. Up on the screens, they had a live feed of the finish line, so you could watch people finishing, which was great because about the time that I finished the half marathon was when the lead pack was starting to come through for the full marathon. So that was really cool to get to watch them finish as well. So overall, this was a fantastic race. Just the overall vibe was amazing. Everybody was just happy to be there. It was meaningful. It was moving. The course was fantastic. The crowd support was amazing. It was just great. I would definitely run this one again. If you're looking for a race to do in Tennessee, I would definitely recommend this one. It's just great on all aspects, and especially if you are looking to maybe PR, then this is a great flat course that'll help you do that. So that's my experience with the St. Jude Memphis Half Marathon. I hope you enjoyed that. If you have any questions about it, make sure to drop those in the comments below. This is your second reminder that if you haven't subscribed, make sure you hit that subscribe button. It's free and it helps me get out to more runners just like you. You can also follow me on social media. All the links are down in the description. You can find me across all platforms under the name name Running Geek Girl. Thanks so much for being here. I'm so glad you could join me. Remember to laugh hard, run fast, and be kind. See you guys later.